Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the most genuinely good person you've ever known. Perhaps it's your grandmother, who never spoke an unkind word. Maybe it's that teacher who stayed after class to help struggling students. Or that friend who always seems to put everyone else first. Now here's the question that will reshape everything you thought you knew about goodness. Are they truly powerful, or are they quietly suffering? Today we're embarking on a journey through one of life's most beautiful and brutal paradoxes. We're going to explore why the very qualities that make us most human, our capacity for kindness, generosity, and love, can sometimes become the very chains that bind us. And more importantly, we're going to discover how to transform these gifts from sources of vulnerability into instruments of profound power. This isn't about becoming cold or calculating. This is about understanding the true goodness, the kind that changes the world, requires something most people never talk about: wisdom. The Garden of Intentions. Let me tell you a story about two gardeners. The first gardener loved plants so much that he watered them constantly. Every time he saw a drooping leaf, he rushed over with his watering can. When visitors admired a particular flower, he would immediately give them cuttings. He never said no to anyone who asked for seeds, soil, or help. His garden was always open, always giving. The second gardener also loved plants deeply, but she understood something different about love. She watered her plants according to their needs, not her impulses. She gave cuttings only to those who she knew would nurture them properly. She shared her garden's beauty generously, but she protected its roots fiercely. By the end of the season, the first gardener's plot was muddy, overwatered, and dying. His most precious plants had been taken by people who let them wither in neglect. He stood exhausted and resentful in his barren patch of earth. The second gardener's plot flourished beyond imagination. Her careful attention had created something magnificent, a sanctuary that not only survived, but became a source of beauty and abundance for the entire community. Both gardeners started with love. Both wanted to do good. But only one understood that love without wisdom is destruction in disguise. This is the first truth we must grasp about goodness. Intention alone is never enough. The architecture of vulnerability. There's a beautiful Japanese concept called mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of all things. It speaks to something profound about the human condition. Our very capacity to care makes us vulnerable. But here's what most people miss about vulnerability. It's not something to be ashamed of or to eliminate. Vulnerability is the raw material from which all meaningful connection is built. The question isn't whether you should be vulnerable, it's whether you should be vulnerable indiscriminately. Think about a medieval castle. The architects didn't build it to be impenetrable. They built it to be selectively permeable. There were gates that could open for friends and close against enemies. There were walls that protected what was precious inside while allowing for trade, communication, and relationship. Your goodness needs the same architecture. When you're good to everyone in exactly the same way, you're not being virtuous. You're being lazy. Real goodness requires the difficult work of discernment. It requires asking, who deserves my energy? What situations call for my intervention? When does my help actually help? And when does it harm? This isn't cynicism. This is love sophisticated enough to be effective. The mathematics of the heart. Let me share something that might surprise you. Your capacity to do good is not infinite. I know we're often told to give endlessly, to love without limits, to help without hesitation. But this is a beautiful lie that destroys beautiful people. You have a finite amount of energy, time, and emotional resources. This isn't a moral failing. It's mathematics. And just like any resource, how you allocate it determines what you can build with it. Consider the story of Clara, a social worker I once knew. She was the kind of person who would give you the coat off her back in a snowstorm. She worked 70-hour weeks, answered her phone at all hours, and never said no to anyone in need. Everyone loved Clara. Everyone depended on Clara, until Clara collapsed. Not metaphorically, literally. She was found unconscious at her desk one Tuesday morning, her body finally rebelling against years of self-neglect. While she recovered, the clients she had been trying to save were left without help. The system she had been trying to support crumbled. Her beautiful intention to help everyone meant that in the end, she could help no one. This is when Clara learned something revolutionary. Taking care of herself wasn't selfish, it was strategic. By protecting her own resources, she could protect others more effectively. By saying no to some requests, she could say yes more powerfully to others. The most generous people in history weren't those who gave everything to everyone. They were those who preserved enough of themselves to give profoundly to the right causes at the right times. The language of boundaries. There's a word in psychology that most people misunderstand. Boundaries. We often think of boundaries as walls, cold, separating, unfriendly. But boundaries are actually bridges. They're the structures that make healthy relationships possible. Without boundaries, relationships become parasitic rather than symbiotic. Without boundaries, your goodness becomes an invitation for exploitation rather than an opportunity for genuine connection. Let me tell you about Marcus, a man who thought saying no was cruel. He lent money he couldn't spare, worked overtime for projects that weren't his responsibility, and exhausted himself solving other people's problems. Marcus believed this made him good. What Marcus discovered was heartbreaking. The people who took advantage of his boundaryless goodness lost respect for him. They began to see him not as generous but as weak, not as kind but as manipulable. His very attempt to be loved made him less lovable. When Marcus finally learned to say no, kindly but firmly, something magical happened. The people who truly cared about him respected his boundaries. The people who didn't respect his boundaries revealed themselves to be unworthy of his energy in the first place. And Marcus, no longer depleted by constant giving, had the energy to be genuinely present for the relationships that mattered. This is the paradox of boundaries. They do not separate us from others. They help us connect more authentically. The theater of goodness. Here's something that will challenge how you think about authenticity. Sometimes, the most authentic thing you can do is perform. I don't mean being fake or manipulative. I mean understanding that different situations call for different aspects of your character to take center stage. A surgeon in the operating room embodies precision, authority, and emotional control. The same surgeon at home with their children might embody playfulness, gentleness, and emotional availability. Both are authentic expressions of who they are, but they're contextually appropriate. This is what I call the theater of goodness. Understanding that your goodness needs to be performed differently in different arenas of your life. With your elderly parent, your goodness might look like patience and gentle care. With a manipulative colleague, your goodness might look like firm boundaries and clear communication. With a struggling friend, your goodness might look like honest feedback rather than comfortable lies. The person who is good in exactly the same way in every situation isn't being authentic. They're being inflexible. Real goodness adapts its expression while maintaining its essence. The alchemy of suffering. Every person who has ever lived has faced moments when their goodness was rewarded with pain. You help someone, and they take advantage of you. You love someone, and they betray you. You give your best effort, and you're overlooked or underappreciated. These experiences create a fork in the road of your character. You can become bitter, closing your heart and becoming suspicious of others. Or you can become wise, learning to love more skillfully without loving less deeply. The alchemy of suffering is this: pain can either make you harder, or it can make you stronger. The difference lies not in what happens to you, but in how you process what happens to you. I think of my friend Sarah, who was devastated when her business partner stole their shared company and left her with nothing but debt. For months, she was consumed with anger and disappointment. She questioned everything she believed about trust, partnership, and goodness. But slowly, Sarah began to see her betrayal differently. It hadn't happened because she was good. It had happened because she was naive. She had confused goodness with gullibility, trust with oversight, partnership with passivity. Sarah's next business venture was built on the same foundation of integrity and care, but it was protected by legal structures, clear agreements, and careful vetting of partners. She hadn't become less good. She had become more wisely good. This is the difference between innocence and wisdom. Innocence believes that good intentions are enough. Wisdom understands that good intentions need to be paired with good strategy. The ecology of relationships. Your relationships form an ecosystem, and like any ecosystem, it needs balance to thrive. If you allow invasive species, people who take without giving, to dominate your relational landscape, they will crowd out the relationships that could truly flourish. This doesn't mean becoming suspicious of everyone or keeping score in your friendships. It means understanding that your energy and attention are precious resources that should be invested thoughtfully. Think about the people in your life who make you feel energized after spending time with them. These are the relationships worth prioritizing. Then consider the people who consistently leave you feeling drained, frustrated, or diminished. These relationships need boundaries, transformation, or sometimes gentle release. This isn't about judging others. It's about stewarding your capacity to love well. The ripple effect of wise goodness. When you begin to practice strategic goodness, goodness guided by wisdom rather than impulse, something beautiful happens. Your impact becomes exponentially more powerful. Instead of helping many people a little bit ineffectively, you help fewer people more profoundly. Instead of spreading your care so thin that it barely registers, you concentrate your goodness in ways that create lasting change. Consider the story of Maria, a teacher who used to stay after school every day helping any student who asked. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, and ironically, not very effective at helping anyone significantly. Then Maria made a strategic decision. She identified the 5 students who were most at risk of dropping out, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they lacked support and encouragement. She focused her after-school time exclusively on these 5 students, providing not just academic help, but mentorship, life guidance, and consistent presence. 4 of those 5 students graduated. 2 went on to college. 1 became a teacher herself, inspired by Maria's model of focused care. Maria's strategic goodness didn't just change individual lives, it created a legacy that continues to ripple outward. The seasons of service. There's a time for every kind of goodness under heaven. A time to give generously and a time to receive gracefully. A time to serve others and a time to serve your own growth. A time to say yes with enthusiasm and a time to say no with love. Understanding the seasons of service means recognizing that you can't be everything to everyone at all times. It means giving yourself permission to focus deeply on particular areas of impact while letting other opportunities pass by. This seasonal approach to goodness allows you to be fully present to what you're doing, rather than partially present to everything you feel you should be doing. The courage to disappoint. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of strategic goodness is this. It requires the courage to disappoint people whose expectations you can't or shouldn't meet. When you begin setting boundaries, some people will call you selfish. When you start focusing your efforts, some people will accuse you of not caring. When you stop being available for every request, some people will question your goodness. This is the tax you pay for wisdom, and it's worth every penny. Because on the other side of this temporary disappointment lies something magnificent. Relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided dependence. Impact based on depth rather than breadth. And a version of yourself that can sustain goodness for a lifetime rather than burning out in a few years. The integration. As we near the end of our journey together, I want you to imagine 2 versions of yourself. The first version says yes to everyone, helps without discrimination, and gives until there's nothing left to give. This version is praised for being nice, but struggles to create lasting impact. This version is loved by many, but respected by few. This version burns bright and burns out. The second version says yes strategically, helps with wisdom, and gives from a well that is carefully maintained. This version might not be universally liked, but creates profound change. This version is both loved and respected. This version burns steady and burns long. Both versions are good people, but only one version can change the world. The choice before you. We stand now at the crossroads where philosophy becomes practice, where understanding becomes transformation, where insight becomes action. You have learned that goodness without strategy is often ineffective. You have seen that boundaries don't limit love, they focus it. You understand that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's essential for taking care of others. But knowledge without application is just entertainment. The question is, what will you do with what you now know? Will you continue to scatter your goodness like seeds thrown carelessly to the wind, hoping that some might take root? Or will you plant your goodness with the careful attention of a master gardener, ensuring that what you cultivate will flourish and multiply? The choice is yours, but remember this. The world doesn't need more nice people who accomplish little. The world needs more good people who accomplish much. The invitation. I invite you to begin this transformation gently. Start by noticing where your goodness is being wasted or exploited. Pay attention to which relationships energize you and which deplete you. Consider where you might need to set boundaries or redirect your efforts. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming a wiser version of who you already are. It's about taking the beautiful impulse to do good and pairing it with the practical wisdom to do good effectively. Your goodness is not your weakness. It never was. It was simply waiting to be refined by wisdom, focused by strategy, and empowered by understanding. The world needs your goodness, but it needs your wise goodness. Goodness that can survive, thrive, and create lasting change. The journey toward strategic goodness begins with a single step: the recognition that loving others well sometimes requires loving yourself first, that helping others effectively sometimes requires disappointing them temporarily, and that being truly good sometimes requires looking temporarily tough. Take that step. The world is waiting for the gifts that only a wise and strategic heart can give. What aspect of strategic goodness resonates most with your own experience? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this exploration has opened new possibilities in your mind, share it with someone who might benefit from thinking differently about the relationship between goodness and power. Remember, true goodness is not about being weak enough to be loved by everyone. It's about being strong enough to love everyone wisely. Until we meet again in the next exploration of what it means to be human, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep choosing wisdom over mere niceness. The world needs more gardeners who understand that the most beautiful gardens require both tender care and thoughtful boundaries.